There is a secret about the Filipino people. A secret so old, so deeply buried, that even the nations surrounding them have forgotten it ever existed. Some scholars believe the true origin of the Philippines is not written in any modern history book, not hidden in old Spanish archives, not traced through island migrations, but encrypted in ancient genealogies written long before Southeast Asia had a name, a nation of more than 7,000 islands. Yet one question has refused to die. Where did the Filipinos truly come from, according to the Bible? And what shocks researchers most is this: the biblical trail does not point to China or Malaysia or Indonesia. It points to two opposing bloodlines, two ancient streams that once flowed from the sons of Noah, Japheth and Ham, two lineages that were never meant to meet. Yet somehow mysteriously they did. You are about to hear the story of a people whose ancestry stretches across continents and across scripture, a story that challenges the boundaries of ethnicity, archaeology, and theology itself. A story that suggests the Filipino identity may be far older and far more complex than anyone ever imagined. Every episode is a lamp carried into a hidden corridor of time. If your heart is steady, if your mind is open, then step with me into the unknown. Because a people as diverse as the Filipinos could not have emerged from a single root, yet their diversity aligns with something astonishing, something described in the earliest chapters of Genesis right after the Great Flood. And to understand that mystery, we must begin with the very first ancestors who walked these islands. The story begins with a truth so vast, so intricate, that it often goes unnoticed, even by those who live within it. The Philippines is not just one nation. It is a mosaic, an extraordinary living tapestry of more than 110 ethnic groups, each carrying a fragment of a history older than kingdoms, older than colonial empires, perhaps even older than the very names of the islands themselves. Tagalog, Bisaya, Ilocano, Igorot, Lumad. Names spoken today as identities, but once whispered as lineages, echoes of ancestors who carved their lives into mountains, coasts, and forests long before ships cut across the Pacific. Yet among all these groups, one stands apart with a startling revelation. The Negrito peoples, the Ayeta, the Ati, the Agta, are not simply another thread in the Filipino tapestry. They are the oldest, the original, the memory of a human presence that stretches back more than 40,000 years. Because the Negrito story shakes the foundation of Southeast Asian history. Their DNA links them to ancient Australoid populations, people who walked across land bridges and coastlines when the world still belonged to rivers of stone and forests untouched by time. When you look at the Philippines today, you're not seeing a young nation. You are glimpsing a continent of stories layered upon stories. But then comes the twist, an archaeological reversal that rewrote the entire narrative. For decades, scholars believed that the ancestors of modern Filipinos drifted northward from Indonesia. But evidence rose from pottery shards, abandoned settlements, and the fingerprints of language itself, revealing something shocking. The great Austronesian migration did not begin in the south. It began in the north. From ancient Taiwan, back when it was home to early seafarers, waves of Austronesians embarked on a journey unlike any other in human history. They sailed into the Philippines, bringing with them not only tools and boats, but entire cosmologies, languages, and traditions of the sea. This north-to-south migration forms the cultural backbone of the Filipino identity. In many lands, migrating groups replace the ones who came before. But not in the Philippines. Here, the Austronesians did not erase the Negritos, they merged with them. A rare and remarkable fusion. The result was a people whose bodies carry the signatures of two worlds, skin tones ranging from pale to deep brown, hair textures from straight to tightly curled, and facial features that blend maritime ancestry with the resilience of Earth's earliest wanderers. a living testament to coexistence rather than conquest. But the story becomes even more astonishing as we trace the centuries forward. Influences flowed in from every direction: the Mon Khmer peoples from mainland Southeast Asia, Indonesian traders, Papuan mariners from the east, Spanish colonists and Mexican settlers traveling through the Manila Galleon, Hokkien and Cantonese merchants, Indian migrants, Arab sailors, Japanese Kirishitan seeking refuge, and later Americans who reshaped education and government. Few nations on earth can claim such an expansive, overlapping circle of cultural inheritance. And the fingerprints of these influences survive most clearly in the Filipino language. Tagalog is rooted firmly in Austronesian soil, but its grammar was reshaped by Spanish structure, its vocabulary enriched by Chinese trade, its modern utility strengthened through English globalism, a hybrid tongue mirroring a hybrid people. Before we move deeper, take a breath and listen. If you sense that the Filipino story does not rise from the soil alone, but from ancient currents of humanity itself, then share your reflections, your memories, or a fragment of your own origin. Your words become part of this journey woven into the same tapestry we now explore together. And now comes the question that biblical scholars could not ignore. A question born from diversity so immense that it mirrors something far older than Southeast Asia, something described in the genealogies following the Great Flood. Could the Filipinos be descended from one or even two of the three sons of Noah? That answer is hidden in names most readers skim across. Names that hold entire nations inside them. To unlock the mystery, we must step into the forgotten genealogies of Genesis. To understand the biblical origins of the Filipino people, we must step into one of the oldest genealogical maps in human history, a map not drawn in ink, but in names carved into scripture. A map that begins with a single family stepping out of the shadow of the Great Flood. The Bible describes three sons of Noah, each destined to populate a vast region of the world. Yet only two of those lineages align with the physical, cultural, and genetic mosaic of the Philippines. The line of Japheth and the line of Ham. The line of Japheth through Gomer, and then through a name often forgotten. Togarma is traditionally linked with the peoples of Northern Asia, the ancestors of several Mongoloid and Proto-Austronesian populations. These are the groups whose features include straight black hair, lighter to olive skin, and distinctive monolid or narrow-set eyes, features that live unmistakably within millions of Filipinos today. But then comes the second lineage, Ham, the father of southern nations, the patriarch of peoples marked by deeper skin tones, curly or coiled hair, robust builds, and broad facial characteristics. The very traits carried by the Negritos of the Philippines, whose presence predates every migration wave that followed. Two ancient bloodlines, two sons of Noah, one island nation bearing both signatures in its people. This is not common, not accidental, and certainly not ignorable. Now we step deeper into the mystery, a name almost always passed over in Sunday sermons, yet critical to our exploration. Togarma, the forgotten ancestor. Ezekiel describes a people from the far north, traders and warriors whose identity became obscured over centuries. Many scholars believe Togarma represents a population that once migrated eastward across the steppes, then southward through East Asia, eventually spreading into the early Austronesian world. Because the physical descriptors attributed to Togarma's descendants skin from pale to warm brown, straight dark hair and sharp or narrow eyes appear vividly in the Filipino phenotype, not as isolated traits, but as foundational ones. It is as if the Philippines carries in its faces a coded memory of this ancient northern lineage, and yet the tapestry is incomplete without the second thread, the Hamitic presence. When we look at the Negrito peoples, the Ayeta with their deep brown skin, the Agta with tightly curled hair, the ATI with their sturdy builds and broad noses, we witness the unmistakable imprint of a population tied to the Hamitic branch of humanity. These traits are older than kingdoms, older than agriculture itself. They are the traits of the first voyagers of Southeast Asia, footprints left on the land long before ships or empires were born. Another revelation emerges. The Philippines is not simply an Asian identity. It is a meeting ground between Japheth and Ham. A blending far more ancient than colonial history, far more intricate than modern ethnic labels. Few Asian nations hold this fusion. Most populations lean toward one lineage or the other. But the Filipino identity moves along a spectrum, a color gradient, stretching between the sons of Noah. A nation whose diversity mirrors the very dispersion recorded in Genesis. Now let us return to Togarmah for a moment. His name, preserved in old languages, is believed by some linguists to mean bone valley or strong-boned, an intriguing echo because the Austronesians, including the early Filipinos, were known across the ancient world for their resilience, their strength, their ability to cross oceans with nothing but wind stars and memory to guide them. Strong-boned indeed. Which ancestry resonates more deeply within you? Japheth, the northern wanderer, or Ham, the southern voyager, this is not a question of division, but of discovery, of tracing the quiet rivers of your identity back to their source. For if the Filipino people carry both Japheth and Ham within their bloodlines, then what does that mean in the eyes of Scripture? What does it mean that God placed a people of blended ancestry at the crossroads of the Pacific, in a land that would become a spiritual gateway for millions in Asia? The answers lie ahead in the theological heart of this investigation. To understand the Philippines through Scripture is to look at the islands not merely as a chain of mountains rising from the ocean, but as the final stroke of a story that began when the world was washed clean. For in the aftermath of the Great Flood, humanity did not scatter randomly. It dispersed along lines, families, and destinies, each shaped by the sons of Noah. And the Philippines, perhaps more than any other nation in Southeast Asia, bears the unmistakable imprint of that dispersion. The Filipino identity is not singular. It is a convergence, an intersection of lineages that mirrors the very structure of Genesis 10, the Table of Nations, where many peoples can trace themselves to one dominant ancestral stream. The Philippines stands as a living model of the post-flood world. A people formed through blending, not separation. Connection, not isolation. Inheritance, not erasure. And what makes this extraordinary is that Scripture never presents humanity as an arrangement of pure, isolated groups. Instead, it gives us a world in motion, migrating, trading, intermarrying, shaping new cultures at every step. The Filipino story aligns perfectly with that biblical vision. A people forged by the meeting of Japheth and Ham. Not symbolic lines, literal ones. Traits of the North woven into traits of the South. Austronesian navigators merging with Earth's earliest settlers. A genetic and cultural tapestry that looks remarkably like the world described in the ancient genealogies. But the story does not end in antiquity. It evolves. For centuries, the Philippines became a crossroads, perhaps the most complex cultural intersection in the Pacific. Austronesian sailors brought with them the legacy of the stars, reading the sky like an ancient scripture. Negrito communities preserved some of the oldest human traditions in Asia, carrying memories older than metallurgy itself. Chinese traders charted commerce across the archipelago. Their families became woven into the very fabric of Filipino towns. Spanish missionaries arrived with their language, architecture, and theology, leaving behind faith that would transform the islands into one of the most Christian nations on earth. The Manila Galleon linked the Philippines to Mexico, creating an unexpected fusion between Southeast Asia and Latin America through trade, intermarriage, and shared history. Indian, Arab, and Persian influences embedded themselves through early maritime routes. Japanese settlers, some fleeing persecution in the age of the Kirishitan, found refuge among the islands. Later, American governance reshaped education politics and the modern Filipino worldview. The Philippines absorbed not domination, but layers of culture, belief, language, and blood. No other Asian nation mirrors this depth of convergence. And so, when viewed through the lens of biblical ethnology, the Philippines represents more than a geographic entity. It becomes a symbol, a reminder of how God shapes nations through the movement of peoples, how history is not a straight line, but a series of interconnected paths leading toward unexpected destinies. In a theological sense, the Philippines embodies unity through diversity. It stands as a testament to how different lineages, Japhethite and Hamitic, can merge not in conflict, but in harmony. A nation whose strength lies in its ability to absorb, adapt, and transform. A nation positioned at the spiritual frontier of Asia, where faith grew not from conquest, but from encounter, conversation, and conviction. Today, the Philippines is one of the most Christian nations on earth, a place where ancient bloodlines and modern faith walk hand in hand, where the descendants of seafarers, mountain tribes, traders, exiles, explorers, and settlers gather under a shared identity that transcends simple categories. It is as if the islands themselves were shaped to be a meeting place between continents, between cultures, between histories, between the old world and the new. So what then does Scripture reveal when we stand back and look at the Philippines as a whole? It reveals a nation that reflects the very heart of the biblical story that humanity is one, yet many. Diverse, yet connected. Scattered, yet destined to meet again. A nation shaped by tides of migration, the hand of history, and perhaps, quietly, the guidance of providence. And if this is true, then the Filipino identity is not simply a product of geography or genetics. It is a revelation in itself. Now, to fully grasp what this means spiritually, historically, and culturally, we must step into the final reflections that bring this journey to its close. What you have just walked through is more than a study of origins. It is the story of a people shaped by two ancient rivers of humanity, Japheth and Ham, woven together across oceans, migrations, and the quiet guidance of time. A nation whose identity reflects strength, resilience, and a mystery still unfolding. If something in this journey stirred your spirit, do not let it fade. Share your thoughts, your roots, your question. Your voice may help someone else rediscover their own story. And if you wish to explore more hidden histories and biblical lineages like this video, leave a comment, subscribe, and stay with us for the next video. Until then, may every step you take reveal another thread in the tapestry of creation and another secret waiting to be found.